Jake was a paragon of virtue. He was a kind, attentive, and caring guy. He devoted his whole life to helping his sick mother. He missed a lot of opportunities because of her. He didn't go to college, didn't find a stable job, didn't start a family. He sacrificed everything to satisfy his mother's needs. But gradually, over the years, Jake began to realize that his life was passing him by. He began to feel anger and frustration towards his mother, feeling neglected and unrecognized. His kindness and tolerance were exhausted, and he began to look for ways to change his life. One night, when Jake was returning home from work, he was confronted with an attack. He was beaten and robbed. This incident caused darkness and rage in him. He decided that he would no longer be a victim. Instead, he began to harass and bully other people. Jake is a werewolf. He exterminated everyone who met him on the way. His generosity and care turned into sadistic satisfaction as he inflicted pain and suffering on his victims. Every day he became more and more violent, realizing that this was the only way to survive in this world. But one day Sheriff Elizabeth comes into play. The dragon of Jake's past turned out to be the same age as Elizabeth, and only she can find and stop the maniac. And then the real hunt begins, a mad killer and an insidious policeman. Sheriff Elizabeth was an experienced and talented investigator. She resolutely began to investigate a series of murders that took place in the city. But Jake was cunning and careful. He left a minimum of traces and followed a simple rule not to attack those who could figure him out. His methodical plan was carefully thought out, and he continued his terrible deeds without falling into the eyes of the law. Sheriff Elizabeth immersed herself in the details of the investigation, gradually gathering evidence and analyzing the cases. She understood that she was facing a smart and cold-blooded criminal, and to catch him, she would need much more than the usual methods and procedures. Each subsequent murder brought Jake closer to the last act of his revenge. At this time, Jake's ex-girlfriend Emily arrives in town. She learns about the mysterious murders taking place in the city, and, unaware of the horrors that her ex-boyfriend was composing, begins to inspect crime scenes and collect information. She becomes Jake's personal target, but also the key to catching him. Suddenly, Sheriff Elizabeth finds important evidence that links the murders specifically to Jake. But before she can apprehend him, Jake unexpectedly kidnaps Emily and leaves a message for the sheriff. The game continues. Try to catch me before I complete my revenge. Now the sheriff and Emily will have to fight for their lives, and Jake, in turn, is ready to do anything to end his deadly game. When Sheriff Elizabeth received a text from Jake, she realized that there was almost no time left. Supported by her observations and evidence, she set off in pursuit of Jake, knowing that he would only become more dangerous and adventurous if he managed to get away from her. At this time, Jake took Emily to an old abandoned mansion outside the city, a place he once visited with his mother when he was still a child. There he set up an underground labyrinth where he was going to complete his revenge. He cast a forbidden spell on the building, which is located in the old forest, so that no one could interfere in his business. At the same time, Sheriff Elizabeth turned to her colleague, Detective Michael, for help, who was always loyal to her and helped her in difficult situations. Together they began to participate in the hunt for Jake, following in hot pursuit. In a creepy maze, Jake forced Emily to play a dangerous game where every step could be the last. He had cunningly set traps and was preparing to carry out his brutal revenge, full of torture and humiliation. But suddenly Emily finds a clue that helps her and Sheriff Elizabeth enter the maze and start looking for a way to save her and catch Jake before it's too late. But inside the maze, they are waiting for terrible discoveries and dangers that they will not only have to overcome, but also survive. Time passes quickly, and every second becomes crucial. When Sophia opened the door of her house, her eyes froze in surprise. A man in a black raincoat stood in front of her, smiling sheepishly. Sophia felt that this was an unusual person, not just a passerby. She invited him inside and offered him a cup of hot tea. There was no limit to the pleasant conversation between strangers. The man told Sophia that his name is Alexander, and he is a traveler from a distant country. He told her about his amazing adventures, encounters with unusual creatures, and the amazing places he had visited. Sophia was enchanted by his stories, and she realized that Alexander was not an ordinary traveler. After a few days, Sophia could no longer imagine her life without this mysterious man. He brought bright colors to her gray life and made her believe in magic. Every conversation they had was like an adventure, and Sophia couldn't tear herself away from Alexander for a minute. But one day Alexander suddenly disappeared. Sophia searched the whole house, but he was nowhere to be found. She began to worry about him, and so, a few days later, a letter came to her. "Dear Sophia, please don't look for me. My adventures continue, and I can't promise you anything. But I promise to come back when the time is right. For now, stay strong and don't forget about our magical world. Your Alexander." Sophia spent several months waiting for Alexander's return. She still remembered his mysterious stories about distant lands, incredible adventures, and mysterious creatures. His absence left a void in her heart, and she realized that she could no longer return to her everyday life. One day, when Sophia was walking through the park, she stopped at an abandoned bench where she often sat with Alexander. Suddenly she heard a soft rustle and someone whispering. Turning around, she saw a strange glowing portal from which a man in unusual clothes came out. "Sophia, you're still waiting for me," he said and smiled. It was Alexander, and he returned as promised. "I had to go on a new journey, but I was always thinking about you. Now I'm back, and we have the opportunity to continue our adventures together." Sophia was glad to see him again, but she had a lot of questions. Alexander said that he fought evil forces in distant worlds and searched for ancient artifacts that could change the course of history. He admitted that it was very dangerous and he had a lot of enemies. Now Sophia and Alexander are united again, and their adventures are just beginning. They went together in search of new mysteries to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations and protect the world from evil. But they will face new dangers and challenges, and they realize that only together they will be able to overcome all difficulties. Their meetings and separations, adventures and dangers have only strengthened their bond, and they understand that this path will be full of risks, but their spirit will never break. Neither time nor space will separate them. Their bonds are stronger than ever before. As soon as Sophia and Alexander set off together in search of new mysteries, their journey became even more exciting and dangerous. They went to ancient ruins and scientific labyrinths, searched in the most remote corners of the world. Together they solved ancient writings and revealed secrets that had been kept for decades. However, with each new discovery, it became clear that they were in danger. Alexander suddenly began to behave more secretively, sometimes even disappearing entirely for days. Sophia began to feel that he was hiding something from her. When she tried to ask him about it, he turned the conversation aside, and Sophia noticed that there was a strange shadow in his eyes. One day, going on another exploration of the ancient ruins, they came across an ancient scroll with incomprehensible signs. Suddenly, they felt the ground begin to tremble beneath them, and the air was filled with a strange radiance. They found themselves in a world that belonged neither to the past nor to the present. There they met an insidious sorcerer who decided to use their knowledge to gain power over all the worlds. In a duel with a sorcerer, Alexander and Sophia realized that their travels in search of secrets were not accidental. They were destined to play the role of defenders of the universe from the evil that lies in the depths of every antiquity. Now they face a path paved through dangers and trials, and they realize that only together they will be able to overcome the unprecedented threats that await them ahead.